All right, welcome again, Team ET. Welcome to another week. It's a fantastic week, sitting here looking at the wet weather out the window, but we have a great guest on as usual. Never different each week, but this time really interesting background to our guest, and I'm really excited to unpack some of Ronnie's story. So, Ronnie Teja, welcome to the ET project. Great to have you on here, and I look forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. Pleasure's all mine, Wayne. I really look forward to getting this on with you, bud.
Look, it's been a while coming, and I apologize for that. But you come from, I don't know if listeners can pick up on that short intro from yourself, but you come from one of my favorite countries in India, is your heritage, at least, maybe not in the last half of your life. Maybe that's a good starting point. Where in India do you hail from? And maybe you can give us a little intro of who you are.
Yeah, sure. My name is Ronnie Teja. I was born and raised in India. So I moved to Canada, I guess when I was an adult, so 22. Born in a place called Jalandhar, which is up north, so about 2 hours from Amritsar, where the Golden Temple is. But my dad was in the army, so essentially we had we moved all over India. We lived in Mumbai, lived in Pune, lived in Calcutta, lived up north. So quite the nomad life, So still living the nomad life up in Thailand. So I mean, primarily I would say I'm still Indian. I'm going to do sound pretty Indian, I think. Or I don't think so. I don't know, in my head I don't sound like it too much. But definition of my passport, I'm Canadian, because you can't have two passports in India. So now I guess the term is Indo-Canadian in this day and age.
Indo-Canadian, very good. But
yes, sir.
Yeah, and even though you're Indo-Canadian, you're living in Bangkok. So
yeah.
And we'll unpack that. We'll unpack that further.
To make it even more complicated for people on here.
Yeah, and just to throw another city in the mix, closer to my own home heritage, you also spend time in Melbourne, I believe.
Yeah, all of last year, every 2 weeks I was in Melbourne, between Bangkok and Melbourne. So there we go.
Fantastic. So we're really on the global tour at the moment. And before we
welcome.
Before we hit the record button, you were just telling me you're heading up to Europe shortly for a couple of events, and I'm very envious. I spent a lot of my career up in Germany, and so I like that area immensely. So good luck. I wish I could fit in the suitcase and come with you.
Yeah, for sure. Any day, man. Come on down.
So tell us a little bit about your background. I know you did a BA in marketing, and I think it was microfinance in Mumbai.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when University of Mumbai, I did my bachelor's in microfinance and economics, and then marketing was my elective. To give you a brief background, it's like, so like I mentioned, my dad was in the army. So in India, I wouldn't say like we were very well to do, but we were well to do enough in the sense we were middle class or upper middle class, essentially, right? Got a scholarship to go to LSE to study welfare economics. So very, very niche down subject. So it was sort of a different mindset back then, very idealistic. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to go work for the World Bank or World Economic Development Fund or something else like that. And I said, okay, this is what we're going to do. And I think about to the end of my master's, I got a call from my mom, and she's like, look, we've got the golden ticket. It's a winning ticket. It's a lottery ticket. It's a golden, you'll be getting the immigration call to Canada. And I said, well, what about my life? I just set up here in London. She's like, nope, we're moving. There we go. Done. So we go from London all the way to the other end of the world, which is essentially what you would call the corner of the world, which is Vancouver, BC. London and Vancouver. And interestingly enough, they didn't have any jobs in policy. And they're like, well, what are we going to do to support you in like welfare economics in a city which is in a part of the world that is quite economically developed? And they're like, what sort of work would you be able to do here? Because most of the jobs in my sector, if I were to continue in that same sector, would be in Ottawa, working with Canada Aid or USAID or something else like that, which is in Washington DC. So lo and behold, landed. Next day I had a job. My job was basically going to pick blueberries because we're a family of 4 living in somebody's basement, and the men in the family had to work because we had to make rent. There's no other way. So we went from I would say a very comfortable lifestyle to a very uncomfortable lifestyle, at least when I think about it. But what I don't think about as I'm speaking to you, and I've thought about it a few times, is like, if I thought I was being uncomfortable, imagine how my parents would have felt. I mean, at the age of 45, 46, you're changing your life for your kids, right?
Absolutely.
It's like
Yeah.
you've literally changed, you've turned the world on its head, and you're going through all these, like, you're making all these sacrifices, but your kids never realized it. And a kid like me was basically like, uh, I don't know what the politically correct word is. We were bitching about life, being like, hey, this isn't, like, I don't like this place, I don't know what I'm going to get there. So now, when I speak to you, I realize, I'm like, wow, these guys went through so much
Yes.
to and so late in their lives to give us a better life. So I can speak to you sitting on a beach in Thailand, which I'm forever grateful for.
And I know that had some, the decision to move to Thailand had some family objection to it. So we'll come back to that, because I think that's also an interesting extension to what you're talking about. So before moving to Vancouver, you, as you said, you were in London. You were just settling down. I think you went to London School of Economics.
Yes, sir, I did. Yeah,
yeah,
that LSE. Yeah.
yeah. So what, as you said, economics, finance, marketing, you were going to save the world. Had that not changed, where do you think the trajectory would have taken you?
Yeah, the trajectory would have been a desk jockey. I would have probably been working in development, probably working a 9 to 5 job.
Hmm.
Not 9 to 5, but like in very remote parts of the world. So it could have been, I would have been working in Zem, or could have been working in Sudan. The interesting part is this: my sister has taken the mantle from me, because she works for Doctors Without Borders, and she's in, certain parts of the world where there's development work needed. However, I went the other side, and a part of the reason I believe that might have been is because, um, economically and financially, when you're thrust into certain situations, you realize you don't want that cycle to repeat. So for
Hmm.
me, it became extremely important to have enough money, or to generate enough money for me to take care of those around me, no matter what.
Right. And
Yeah.
what was the ideal outcome from your parents' perspective when
Ah, the ideal outcome. So yeah, that's a very interesting question. When my father is not a risk taker. My father's been in the army. He's been in the same job for 30, 35 years. So
Hmm.
he wanted me, preferably, to go work in a bank. And my first job, was in digital marketing, was at HSBC,
Hmm.
which was basically like, he's like, you know what, get on a pension, 9 to 5, you'll be fine. Go to the office every day and just continue on that road. And whereas I'm a mother's son, which is essentially like, she would essentially encourage me to do things that are out of the box. And she would, and I never did conventional things anyway. I was a naughty kid. So, so she said, look, if you do want to take chances, do take chances. When I started my business, I think my mom was more encouraging. But I'll tell you what, the interesting part is, after 3 months, both of them were on board. We're like, this guy's gone crazy. I think that he sees some potential in this. Maybe we'll just follow him along the way. And 3 months in, I think somebody sent me a cease and desist letter for something that had happened online. And when you're starting out, you're 20, late in your late 20s, you're like, wow, what do I do with the cease and desist? I'm so scared. You think you're getting sued for the first time. And my dad's like, yeah, they're like, don't worry about it. People do this crap anyway. So I was like, okay, well, that's interesting, right? So maybe they don't know about business, but they know a lot about life.
Hmm.
And to have that sort of comfort, or somebody backing you up, is really important.
Yeah.
That support, I think, goes a long way.
Absolutely. How much do you think that's influenced your risk taking now, given that you now know that they're behind you and they're sort of in your corner?
Yeah. Look, at any time of day, I have to take calculated risks. I think when I started, the tolerance for risk was much higher. It was basically like, you can take swings, right? You'll be up 60%, you'll be down 100%, you'll be up 90%, you'll be down 30%. So the swings were pretty important. It's kind of like my business. My business was started on if I may share, was started on on a book that I read, a magazine. It literally said there's 70% of margin to be made in quartz watches, and I was like, wow, that sounds good, but I don't know nothing about watches. So what do I
Yes.
do about watches? So I flew from Vancouver to Hong Kong, which is about $500, and basically rang the numbers, which is called my friend. I said, hey, I'm coming to stay with you. Stay, it was for a week, stayed a month, and I said, every day went to one chai, hit up every major watch manufacturer till they got so tired of me and like so. They're like, why are you just kicking tires on our doors? Till some guy said, look, you don't know how watches are made. Come with me, I'll show you how watches are made. And he took me to Shenzhen to his factory for a week, which ended up being 1 month again. Well, as you see, you don't invite me to your house, I'll overstay my welcome. So ended up doing that in Shenzhen, and then I had the goal at the end of the day to convince this person. Be like, look, I think this is where money is moving in online marketing. Can you fund my first run? I only have very limited amount of capital, and I'm going to put most of it into ads. So I need you to do something for me here. And he's like, man, this is too much. Anyway, long story short, he basically said, I'll cover you up to like, if you just put a 30% deposit, the 70% I'll cover, and I'll give you like very lenient payment terms for 120 days, which in China is unheard of. So he was very kind
Sure.
to me from that perspective, and that's how I got started, right, on a whim, 100. And I think, looking back, I would say I have been lucky to have good people in my life, because if it weren't for the generosity and the ability to take chance on me or to open the doors to me, I don't think so I would have made any of this. I think I would have gone to China, stayed a week, and then failed and just gone, tail between our legs, gone back to Vancouver. I think the other catalyst at this point of juncture was, I think, and it's true in this day and age, which is essentially somebody came to me and applied for this big job at one juncture, which was at this company called MEC in Vancouver. And MEC is basically like it's the outdoor enthusiast sporting store in Vancouver. And I remember them asking for feedback, and I said, hey, I didn't get the job. Can you tell me why I didn't get the job? And the feedback was, you're a flight risk. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm a flight risk? And the person goes, well, you change your jobs every 2 years. But I'm like, everybody in the industry, when digital marketing changes, to level up, you need to change your job every couple of years. Or the other way of looking at it is, maybe you're not giving me something interesting enough to keep me busy or my mind busy. But that's a very poor way of looking at things, don't you think? Like where they're saying, look, we think you might leave the job after a couple of years, of no good use to us. Weird, isn't it?
It is. Let's fill a couple of gaps here, because we've gone very quickly to where you are today. But
my apologies.
No,
I do like
to
bounce around a bit.
That's fantastic. You mentioned your first morning, or shortly after you arrived in Vancouver, you're out picking blueberries. How did you transition from blueberries to digital marketing?
Yeah, you are right. We did skip a few things there. I mean, look, I'm giving these guys a good story, but they don't know the backstory. The backstory is more important. So for those who are listening and those who are watching, the road to Rome is not carved with paths of gold. It's definitely not happened.
Yeah.
I landed on the 14th of May. I remember clear as day, because I can literally tell you the date that I landed. On the 15th. I'd barely gotten over any jet lag, and mom said, look, you've got a job. I'm like, what's my job? She's like, you're going into the fields to pick blueberries. I was like, what the hell? I've never done any manual labor in my life. Like, that's who I was. I hadn't even washed dishes like kids do in the West, or like I said, we were privileged in the sense we had a level of comfort, or garden, or done any of that stuff. She's like, yep, you're gonna go pick blueberries. I was like, what is this? So anyway, I said, must be this thing my mom has arranged, blueberry picking tour. Went down. So it's a cube van that comes and picks you up. So it's like you go and like they show you in the movie, there's like a bunch of convicts in this cube van, except the convicts are basically blueberry pickers like myself. And I was the youngest guy there. I think I was 22, and everybody else is over 60, who are basically parents of Indian immigrants, right? Because they want to make their own living. So anyway, so long story short, funny thing is, turns out I'm not a good blueberry picker. Definitely haven't done it. So somebody had to teach me how to do it, this old lady. And And I used to, the first day, and I'd say the next couple of weeks after that, I remember I used to wake up every morning, go to this field, and I used to cry because it's a pretty, it's an ego-shattering experience.
Mm.
It's a really ego-shattering experience because you have that energy when you come out of school and you're like, yeah, I'm going to take over the world. Yeah, I can do this, and it's kind of like life gives you a different answer for what your plans were.
Yep.
So yeah, so it definitely is very humbling now that I think back to it, but it's also like it grounded me a little bit. It grounded my ego. And so for that, I'm thankful for that experience. If you guys want to know how much you make picking blueberries for about 10 hours a day, it's 50 Canadian dollars, which was pretty good. I didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't do anything, so definitely was good. Good sort of contribution to the household income. And then through that, I sort of got a second job selling radio, door-to-door radio, which is quite interesting because I always had a flair for advertising, but I didn't really know much about sales. But if you ever want to work as an entrepreneur or in any job, it's very important to learn door-to-door sales. And I think if you ever want to become an entrepreneur, you need to learn how to do door-to-door sales in ethnic communities. So be it Indians or Chinese specifically, because we are notoriously cheap. so, and then that I used to take the public transit. I used to take public transit to go to the Indian part of town. So there's about 2 different areas where I would go, and then I would basically start in the morning at 8 a.m. from one end of the row, and basically cover the whole. There used to be 3 strip malls. So I used to basically cover each strip mall and knock on every door. And the thing is, you do it the Indian way, which is kind of interesting. You don't ask for things directly like we do in the West, which is like, hey, how much? What's it worth? What is the value? Let's do it. In the Indian way, it's like, oh, don't want to say no, don't want to say yes. It's kind of lead on, and there's a lot of cultural nuances to it, like which is kind of weird, right? Because it's like people can just say no, but people don't want to say no because it sounds kind of rude,
Yes.
So I used to go and chase this whole round, in 2 parts of Vancouver. I guess 3 days a week on each side, and it was interesting. Yeah,
But
you brought up some memories.
so you were doing both these jobs together, I guess, right? To some
Yes,
extent, you
there
were
was
starting early with the blueberries and then carrying on with the door to door.
7 days a week.
7 days a week.
7 days a week, man.
I read somewhere about you hold 3 values very dear to yourself, and I think that story kind of feeds into that. Determination, hard work, and persistence, if I remember correctly. So,
Yes.
yeah, I think that story really epitomizes those values and is probably what's driven you pretty much your life, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you saying that, Wayne, and thank you for that. I think that had it not been for this life or these experiences, I mean, I don't know what my values would have been. A land of abundance wouldn't have given me these values. But persistence is interesting. Persistence, I guess, came from the experiences of doing these door-to-door radio sales or becoming an entrepreneur, whatever. I think your experiences mold you as a person, right? So I think that I won't trade it. I won't trade it for the world. I don't think so. I would, because I think these 3 things are the cornerstone of my existence.
Yeah,
I do get into trouble because of it, because people are like, why do you chase these things so much? Why are you so deep into this hole? Why don't you make time for X, Y, Z? But I'm like, I get up at 6 a.m. or whatever time I get up with a bounce in my step, and I'm excited. I'm excited to go build something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. So let's move now from the blueberries. Did they stain? I'm curious. Did they stain your hands, by the way?
Oh, they did, man. You know what? I couldn't eat blueberries for about 3 or 4 years after. I was just so done. I was like, couldn't do it. No, I can't. But I can only eat them frozen. So I can't have that like a blueberry cheesecake. Not my thing. Frozen blueberries, definitely my thing.
Very, very interesting. What happens to the
It's weird.
psyche?
Yeah,
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 yeah.
very interesting.
Fresh blueberries, not my thing. It's like frozen grapes. They serve at Japanese restaurants. Definitely my thing.
How did you move from this stream of business into the digital e-commerce?
Yeah, this is about I'm a self-taught digital marketer, right? I said, look, everybody's got get rich quick schemes. Not gonna lie, I had my get rich quick scheme too. I'm like, look, everybody around me is doing affiliate marketing. We need to figure out how the hell this thing works.
Mhm.
So I started reading up on Google, how to do PPC ads and how to do SEO and stuff. SEO for me came quite later in life because I had a good crew of people around me teach me it.
Yep.
For Google ads, it was quite easy. You just read the Google blog. They had a lot of training tools, tips and tricks, YouTube videos. YouTube was becoming a thing because I remember YouTube got acquired by Google in 2006.
Mhm.
And at that time, a point of time, for a princely sum of $1 billion. And people were like, holy hell, this is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's how I taught myself online marketing. I was like, I'm going to teach myself this skill set and I'm going to go work for a big brand. And that brand turned out to be HSBC because they were like, we don't know what this digital marketing thing is. The dot-com bubble just went bust about 5 or 6 years ago. So to please the powers that be, we'll hire somebody in Canada. And that somebody turned out to be this guy because he was happy to take any package that was given to him. I mean, I don't know what market rate in 2010 was, but I think my starting salary was $45,000, which was fair. I'll take it.
Yep.
It was a good experience. Learned how to do media buying, etc., etc. But then after about a few months, I was like, this isn't really what I signed up for. And the reason why I didn't sign up for this was because it would take about 6 to 8 months to deploy one digital campaign. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. This isn't what digital marketing is supposed to be, because you're supposed to look at, in the morning there's news that comes out, by the afternoon you're supposed to traffic out campaigns, and that's how this like you move at the speed of light, right?
Yes.
And I was like, and of course there's 8 levels of approval, and then there's a few bruised egos along the way, and I was like, I don't think so, this is for me, man, I'm good, thanks. And there was a value mismatch from my perspective, right? So I don't know what the right way to say it would be. It's like, I appreciate what you guys do, but this is the job my dad would have wanted me to work in, right? For example, he said, you stay here 25 years, you'll be set for life, man, with pension, moving up the chain, all that stuff. But I was like, this ain't my thing. So left that, joined Best Buy. And Best Buy, to its credit, to this day, I'll mention on any podcast or anything else, and I'll say to the face, is the best way to sink your teeth into learning digital marketing, right? My first foray into retail, I used to get to the office at 7 or 8 a.m. There'd be 3 campaigns on my desk. They're like, we need these out by 12 o'clock. Then there would be another campaign set that came out at 3 o'clock, and they're like, we need this out by 8 p.m. I'd be like, holy shit, this is great. Give me all the work you can. And I'm like, and I'm feeding off of it. Like, some people love the pressure. I love the boiler room atmosphere. I'm like, put it on me, give me all you can, I'll keep spitting it out, right? And it was like a good 5-day gig, 12 hours a day. And after 2 years, you've amassed about 5,000 to 6,000 hours under your belt, and that gives you some confidence. Hey, I can do something about it.
Right.
So that's how it actually worked out. Yeah.
Okay. And it sounds like I've heard you described as a serial entrepreneur, and it sounds very much the case listening to you talking about the speed of operation, the willingness to try new things, to take risks, to really make things happen. So I think it's probably an apt description that I've heard. So yeah.
Oh, Wayne, you give me too much credit.
Well, I mean, you've got the success under your belt now, and I'm sure it wasn't always easy to get there, but you've become very successful with what you do, and the learning along the way is how we do it best, I believe, right?
Oh, 100%.
So, yeah.
Like, yeah, even the journey that I've told you about, just discussing about, hey, I've given you the end result. We have the beginning, but the middle is also interesting in terms of experiences, which I'm happy to. I think that's what's coming next.
Sure.
Which is starting a business sounds exciting, right? So here we are starting our business, and we're like, oh well, like I said, 3 months in, got sued, got a cease and desist by two competitors, which apparently people love to use in the US. I mean, US is a litigious country. They love throwing you letters of legal warfare and hopes of you spending a lot more money than them.
Yep.
I was the sole employee. The first country I started in was Australia, believe it or not, because the conversion rates in Australia were much higher than the US or Canada. I don't know how the story would have played out if it wasn't for Australia. So it's a near and dear place in my heart. And I was the sole employee of the company for the first 3 months. So I'm going back to the days that I had in 2008, 2009, which is basically, I used to wake up at, I think, 4 a.m. PST, which used to be morning in Oz, or the afternoon. And I would start working on that clock, have a 2-hour break of nap in the afternoon, and then I would start tracking out campaigns in the afternoon, and then again, go for whatever exercise, the half an hour that I had, and then start working again. So I was customer service. My customer service name was John Smith, and so I used to basically be out with some friends at a bar, and people would call and I'd be like, "Hello, this is John Smith," and my friends are like, "Who the hell is John, man?" It's like, and they're like, "What's going on?" They're like, "You sound Indian as hell." They know you're not John. You know that, right? You're not goddamn John. I'm like, "Excuse me, I'm John." Anyway, so yeah, so I think about a couple of months into that, I burnt out, man. I was really burnt out. I was like, I can't get myself out of bed or anything else. And then a friend of mine who's worth mentioning, right? Again, it's a resource of somebody who was generous in my life and said, "Look, have you thought about hiring remotely?" Because he ran a company at that point in time and still does, which is a lot bigger than mine. And I said, "Hey, so how does this work?" And through his experiences, or he's done the whole Tim Ferriss work week by then, and he's like, "Look, this is how you go about it. This is what you do." And he says, "I have a couple of employees to refer you to." So essentially, I didn't know much about management, got thrust into management, and I said, "Okay, well, let's have a go at this." And then somehow, first 2 employees worked out, and then from there we grew. Today we are 75. Lots of hires, fires, mistakes, management mistakes, leadership mistakes, everything along the way. I mean, it's a roller coaster journey, and it's fun. There are times that I'm stressed, and there's times that I'm frustrated. But there are times like this when I'm extremely happy to have share these lessons with you.
Yeah. So what is the biggest takeaway in that regard? If you had your time over, what would you avoid doing or do different?
Interesting. Hire slow, fire fast. Number 1, right? And number 2 is sometimes, you're scared to have a hard conversation with the employees. I think for me, it was when I had to have this conversation with my COO back then, who lived in Vancouver, and he's a super nice guy, but probably not like very process oriented. But their direction in life was extremely different from the direction I wanted to take my company. Essentially, that he wanted to have a family, settle down, which is great, right? He just wanted to get a work in Canada. He was happy doing 9 to 5. Whereas I needed somebody who was all hands on board, like working with me step by step, wanting to grow the company. And I said, so that call that I made to him, I remember, was probably, and you might think I'm not a good person for this, because I called him maybe 3 weeks or 4 weeks after he'd had twins. And I said, "Hey, this is where we're at. This is what's happening." And I said, "Look, it's really hard for me to do because we've ridden on this twin for the last 3 or 4 years, but this is where we're at." I said, "In lieu, what we'll do is we'll cover your next 6 months salary, because I understand this is on me and I don't want you to feel pressured financially." But it was a hard call to make.
Yeah.
Because I used to trust in him. We've been friends. We've had all these discussions together. We've been out drinking together, beers together, all that stuff. So it's hard. But to have those conversations, if I had any, I was scared. But if I had any guts, and if I wanted to write by this person, I would have had the conversation 6 months before. Putting a management team in place, delegation. Too many times we focus on taking control as entrepreneurs. We're like, "Yeah, this is mine. I don't want to give this to anybody else." But again, goes back to the boiler room atmosphere, right? It's like, what kind of boiler room atmosphere do you want? Do you want to be working on the nuts and bolts, or do you want to be working in a high pressure chamber? I prefer working in the high pressure chamber today. So choose your battles, right?
I'm really curious. You've got so much hands-on experience and exposure now to starting businesses, running companies. How well did university education prepare you for that?
Zero.
Yeah.
Zero.
Yep.
I'd like to say a lot. But the answer is zero. Like, it's like, I'm sure, like, with the guests that have been on your podcast before, I mean, I'd like to hear from them too. I mean, how many of them have said, let's say 10 is a number. How many out of 10 have said university education helped them get there? Be curious.
Yeah. I'm just thinking myself now. We have a colleague who's from a little bit further south than where you originated from. He's very much into the education, but I think he would also agree with you that it's what you make of it and how you use it in the application. I think if you just take the theory, it doesn't serve you so well. You have to be able to modify it in the real sense and make it something that's useful.
Well, when you said he's a little bit south of me, South Indians are usually smart. South Indians are usually the smartest people in India. So I mean, that we have to caveat this with it. All the IT CEOs that we see, Google and like Microsoft, they're from South India. They're not from North India. North Indians are farmers, man. Those guys were the smart lot. Like, even my school, like, the people who topped the university or the high school charts were all South Indians. None of the North Indians were there.
There's outliers in every category, so you must be one of the outliers, Ronnie.
Oh, for sure.
So we're now thick in the digital e-commerce, and if I look at where you are today with your watch business, it's not the only business that you're operating, if I understand correctly, and you have your finger in many pies.
Yeah, look, we run a portfolio of about 15 different websites. So imagine, like, we're in the software business, we're in the SaaS business, we're in the the watch business. So slowly and surely, what's happened is, along the way, we said, look, we're going to upscale, and we found different niches that we thought we did extremely well, and we were able to scale. 2021, COVID was really good for us. I call it the bonus check payment that we never expected, but it happened. Of course, there's a lot of mental trauma that also came with it, but on the bright side, money in the bank doesn't hurt. I would say the way it's worked out for us long term is that we found certain niches where we would do extremely well, and we said, look, if we can take this business model, we can center all operations. So imagine like a PE firm operating things. Marketing can be centered, operations can be centered, customer service can be centered, and you can and finance can be centered. So, and dev, of course, right? So we find the collaboration of teams between all these companies, and we said we'll put a manager in charge of each of these niches of these businesses, and then we just run it from there. And depending on the profitability of the business, we are able to prioritize what goes where. And this is how we run our companies today. Yeah. So of course, if this side makes the most amount of money or whatever, and the beauty of having a 24/7 team is, these things can all work in your favor.
Yeah, for sure. So it's very much about your ability, as you look at how your company is structured and the businesses are structured, it's very much about being able to scale through a core. So you have a central core that you can then build off and leverage from, I guess. Is that
yes, correct. The core is the most important part, right? The core is essentially what is going to drive the business at the end of the day. It's like we have this. I won't say we have, like, say, alpha talent, right? Yep. We have, and you'll hear this from an entrepreneur for the first. I don't know how many people have admitted to it, but it's like, I don't have the A+ players. I don't have the A+, but what I do have is the A- and the B+ players, right? People who are trainable, people who fit into our business model, and people who basically are like, look, we see what's coming down the road, we can forecast it, and this is the way we can work around it. They're good at seeing around the corners. If you have it's a very cool ability. If you have the ability to look around the corners, I don't care if you're an A+ player. That doesn't work in my books, but most people in our company have that innate ability to look around the corners. And if you can, you're welcome to the company. And that, I think, is more important, because that ability you can't teach. You can't teach that ability.
Yeah, I like that. where to from here? Like you're very successful with what you're doing, but I sense that this is just the start of the journey, not the end of the journey.
Oh, for sure. No, not at all, man. I'm actually starting a new venture in the cigar business, so which is pretty exciting, pretty interesting. Of course, a massive re-export business, which comes with its own set of headaches in terms of laws, bonded warehouses, all this other stuff. So I'm in the midst of it. Spent the last 2 months actually looking into it massively, signing supplier deals as we speak, getting 3PLs as we are going. Part of the trip to Europe includes a stopover in a couple of fancy places, hopefully with some cigar distributors. And that's it, man. It's like marry fun and and work. I think, but for me, is it wrong for me to say that my life is more fun when there's work in it?
It's
It
what
sounds
you
weird,
make,
I know.
it's what you make of it, I think. So
Yeah, I know, man. It's like that's what I said. 6 o'clock, happy to wake up. Let's go work.
what haven't we talked about that's important?
So sorry, well, that's important.
Yeah, what haven't we spoken about in your life and what you're doing that we should talk about?
Nothing, man. I think we've talked about everything. I think it's just honestly, like it's like I said, it's. I think the one thing I would leave this audience with and a message, if if people watch this, is that came to me very very late in life, and perhaps your wisdom, of course, supersedes me in this case, which would be mental health, which is we are all. So I'll give you a real life story, and I'll be bare bones with you, right? I gave up drinking about 3 years ago, and I gave up drinking because I thought it was a stress release. Stress release in the sense that I would go work 5 or 6 days a week. I would go binge drinking, and then I'd come out, and then I'd just be depressed and anxious, and all that fun stuff that goes with it. To that extent that I was running my businesses and drinking at the same time in a very heavy fashion. They were both growing exponentially at that rate. So, it was turning out to be like an addiction. So I'll be, putting it out there. And what I realized was like, I was in that space because I didn't have the opportunity to talk to anybody about it. And I wish, not I wish, now that I look back at it, the one experience that I would have for anybody is like, if you feel yourself in that position, I think it's important to reach out to a counselor if you feel uncomfortable with talking to it about your friends or your parents. But mental health is important, and I wish nothing but the best for people who might be going through certain situations like this. So maybe it's something I would offer as a value add if people were to take anything away from that.
Yeah, and it's very topical right at the moment, of course. In many countries, the focus on well-being, mental health is really, I think in Australia, as an example, they've just released a whole series of legislation for companies to be heavily penalised if they don't take it seriously and start to look at the well-being of their employees.
I mean, look, I came out on the successful side, right? There's a lot of people who haven't. I mean, I used to be about 35 kilos heavier. So that's the good part. That came out of not drinking anymore.
I saw a picture of you online somewhere. I thought, I'm not really sure if it's you. The face looked like you, but the body didn't match.
It's definitely no. The curtain don't match the drapes, man.
So
still has hairy though.
If we go full circle back to your parents at the moment, so your parents both alive, both well.
Yeah, alive, happy, living in Vancouver. Happily married.
Right.
Yeah. My dad's very codependent on my mom, who's in London right now. Visiting family, and he calls me twice a day. He's like, "So, man, what's going on?" I was like, "Dad, you need to get a life here."
But I can imagine they're proud parents of both you and your sister. They feel vindicated, I guess, for the decision to move to Vancouver. I would imagine.
100%, man.
Yeah.
100%. And forever and ever, situations like these are avenues where I get to thank them, and I do feel grateful that they've given me this option of living an amazing life. We've been working remotely for 10 years. like before remote work was a thing. So when, that freedom is extremely important, and that's what I'm most grateful for.
Right. The one thing just dawned on me we haven't mentioned is your watch brand. So what's the name of your company?
It's called branzio.com.
Branzio.com. Fantastic.
Yes,
so where do people go to find you and connect with you and buy all of your
go
watches?
To my website. Yeah, branzio.com. You'll find my brand. If you go to ronnieteja.co, you can find my personal website. It's got a bunch of resources if you want any downloads for SEO blueprint and a bunch of other stuff. Happy to help out. And if there's anything you need, you drop me a DM on LinkedIn, Ronnie Teja, and then I'm happy to help you out in any way, shape, or form. Or if you're going through something, man, it's like you never know. It's like if you feel like you're going through something, just reach out. No problems.
And I would venture to say, if you're looking for a good cigar in the near future, you could be the right person to talk to.
Oh yeah, 100%. If you ever around Bangkok and if you need a good cigar, do drop in and say, hey man, I want to smoke a cigar. I said any goddamn day.
Excellent. Ronnie, it's been great conversation. I really enjoyed, and I'm sure the listeners are going to enjoy very much. I hope people reach out to you and make some connections, and you never know. Know what's around the corner, right? So,
yes, sir. I appreciate you.
Thanks for being on the ET project.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you so much.
So what are you waiting for? Hit the subscribe button below and click on the bell icon so I can pop up in your feed occasionally with a great tip for your ultimate growth.